The capper in the fourth overtime, Bill Belton from 2 yards out, and it became an instant classic. Penn State wins it over Michigan 43-40. As predicted, we thought 43 was what was needed to win the game. No, just kidding. Steve Jones, Todd Sadowski, great to have you with us. Phil Gross, not with us this week, enjoying the week off. There was something about Grand Cayman's offshore account. Don't know what that means, but we'll carry on without him and we'll get Phil back next week. An absolute classic for a variety of reasons, Todd.
No doubt about it, and I think Phil, just too much excitement for Phil. He had to stay at home. He hasn't been able to settle down like a lot of us. Yeah. You know, and yes, it was just everything that surrounded the game, Steve. Of course, a 4 overtime victory is always going to be exciting. It's the longest game in Penn State history. You won it in OT, but it's everything else, the atmosphere. It's Michigan. It's 107,884 people in the stands. It's the whiteout, all the recruits. It's the loss to Indiana, and how do they bounce back against the Wolverines? Just really made it so much fun to watch for everyone.
Sounding off is presented by the Family Clothesline. Normally it's Bill O'Brien, but Donovan Smith gave us a little gold leaving the field, and because of that, he's our sounding off.
Man, that's why we came here, man. Penn State, Michigan. 4 or 5 overtimes. They played a hell of a game. We played a hell of a game. Bill did a great job on the edge. Man, I'm lost for words, man.
I think after that, and I think having 107,884 in full throat, they were at a loss for words too, because they were hoarse after the game. But you sat down and you decided that every week you do something. This time, I think everything fell into place. It was easy for you to do this one.
Yeah, you know, let's talk about the overtime, how it broke down. I mean, forget about the 60 minutes that lead up to it. It was all about the overtimes. It was almost a separate game in itself, and it was really interesting to kind of dissect what happened in the first through the fourth overtimes. And really the thing you got to think about to get it started is we almost didn't have overtime. Bill O'Brien almost went for 2 at the end of regulation.
I really feel good about our 2-point plays, but at the same time I said, you know what, let's go for 1, let's tie it and see how it goes in overtime.
Penn State gets the ball first. 3 plays, nets only 2 yards. Time for Sam Ficken to try from 40 yards away. No good, wide right. That opens the door for Michigan's Brendan Gibbons. The Lions pressure up the middle, and Gibbons drills it right into the arm of defensive tackle Kyle Ballblitz. Second overtime, Gibbons, another chance a few minutes later. Wolverines move the ball to the 8. He connects on the 25-yard chip shot, 37-34 Michigan. The Lions are 3 and Ficken again on their possession. He is true from 36 yards out. Fresh off a crucial miss, he admits that he visualizes a successful kick to quickly forget about the failed attempts.
Every time you miss one, you think, oh, how could I have done that differently? How could I have made that go in? And then before the game, you're always kind of thinking, oh, if this game comes down to a game-winning kick, you try and visualize, winning the game for your team.
Every Lions fan visualizes a loss after Allen Robinson's fumble to begin the third overtime session. The defense stuffs the run on 3rd and 1. That brings out Gibbons again from 33 yards away. Shock and elation after he pushes it wide left. Wolverines get the ball back to start the 4th extra session. It ends with a 40-yarder that's good. The stage is set for Coach O'Brien to go for it on 4th and 1.
We could sit here and keep trading field goals back and forth, keep trading field goals. I think eventually it was time for somebody to win the game, and I had the opportunity to do it. I would probably say that Brady, if he was in that same situation, he probably would have tried to do it. So, I felt like it was time to go for the win.
After Belton reaches out to move the chains, he sparks the celebration with the game-winning touchdown to end the longest game in Nittany Lions history.
The game was awesome. Everybody played really hard, and being a good Michigan team, we're all happy about it. We preached it before the game. We'll come out here with a mean attitude, go out there swinging, attack the line of scrimmage, win your matchup one-on-one, and we're going to win the game.
4 overtime. overtime. Does it feel like you played 4 OTs?
Not really. Fitz got us in great condition, man. I'm good. I'm ready for the next opponent.
Of course, that next opponent is Ohio State, but certainly they deserve that week off as they get ready for the Buckeyes. And Steve, two things that really struck me about the overtime. One was Brady Hoke went into conservative mode in that first overtime after Sam Ficken missed the field goal. It was, I mean, he had Gardner moving to the right spot for his guy. I just never get how coaches think that's an automatic deal from 40 yards and out for kickers, especially when you got a young guy in a hostile environment. It's just a really difficult deal. And then the other thing was the 3rd and 1. But the defense was just phenomenal.
Certainly some miscues along the way. Let's take just a quick look at that, some of the miscues that happened during the course of this. This is why you get the ebb and flow of the game the way it goes. But you know what? When you look at the history of Penn State football, and Fran Fisher is the great historian, upon further review presented by the Penn State Bookstore, Fran has some great Beaver Stadium moments.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm still exhausted from last week's game, and I didn't even play. I was hurt. Oh, what a game. Certainly one forever remembered by Penn Staters everywhere and forgotten by Wolverines worldwide. Remembered games prompted Mike Poorman, fine writer for StateCollege.com, to check in with Luke Prado and me about Beaver Stadium biggies we could recall. We each agreed Saturday's Michigan game ranks 1-2 with the 1982 Nebraska game. That 27-24 win catapulted the Nittany Lions into a national championship. Then there was the 1967 Penn State 13-8 win over North Carolina State. Dennis Oncuts had a field day. The post-game student storm field meant bye-bye to the goalposts, and the win kept Penn State on its way to a 31-game non-losing streak. And who can forget 1994, when it became pretty clear this would be one of Penn State's best ever teams, when Ohio State was thumped 63-16. So many more. I missed your favorite, didn't I? This is Fran Fisher for Upon Further Review.
Fran Fisher, thanks so much for that. Coming up, we'll take a look at the Penn State offense and their performance as we look back after this. Welcome back to Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. Steve Jones, Todd Sadowski, great to have you with us. And, you know, you talk about balance. I mean, balance ends up being important. Balance happens in certain ways. Sometimes it's not just yards, but it's also play call.
Well, yeah, and one of the keys to the game for me last week was second option for Christian Hackenberg as a wideout. And it was great to see Brandon Felder get involved with 6 catches, a couple of touchdowns, and certainly what a fantastic grab he made between 3 defenders on the final drive. And then also Jesse James getting involved with 6 catches. The first touchdown pass to the tight end. It comes in the 6th game. We didn't think it would come that late, but at least it came. It's there. It was great to see.
Let's take a look at the numbers, by the way, when it comes to balance. You can see 44 rushing attempts. Yeah, the yards, but enough to keep the game active. So you got 44-45 in terms of the 89 plays that they ran in terms of the balancing act. And it turns out our player of the week on offense is also the Big Ten's freshman of the week. Quarterback Christian Hackenberg. His numbers we just saw. His play on the field, obviously he made big plays. And not only that, but Bill's moving him out of the pocket. This is what impresses me about him. He's not just a guy that sits back in the pocket and just does one thing. He can move. He has good footwork in the pocket. Now the protection there was outstanding. The offensive line makes that touchdown play there to Brandon Felder. That's the first one. Now here's the next one. Right over the middle. There it is to Jesse James, the one that Todd was referencing right there. Just the ability to make all the throws. Gets out of the pocket, back shoulder throw here to Brandon Felder. That's the 3rd touchdown pass of the game. James, Felder, they get the touchdown passes. And then, of course, he makes the big pass play here to Felder. That's the 37-yard line on the drive that put the game into overtime. Here's one of the great catches in the history of Penn State football. One that you'll talk about forever. down to the half-yard line. Then he took it home from there. By the way, when he took it home from the half-yard line, the sneak, that was the first rushing touchdown that Michigan had given up all year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's, you were mentioning the variety of throws. Whether he was moving to his left, he's moving to his right, he's just in the pocket. And he doesn't, you're not going to see him tuck it under and run, hardly ever.
Right.
But that's a good thing. He's mobile enough to get him the extra time to find the receivers downfield. And if you're a wide receiver, a tight end, anybody running a pass pattern, you know he's going to get enough time to eventually find you. You do not give up on a play.
Drive of the game brought to you by Stocker Chevrolet on the Better Pike across from the Nittany Mall, also with a brand new showroom on Drivable Street. Stocker Chevrolet. Drive of the game, so many choices. Where do we go? Let's see. You have 50 seconds, you got 80 yards, you start out Allen Robinson. They reviewed this play, brilliance on the sideline where he keeps the left foot inbounds, gains control. This is where instant replay again comes into play, so important. Now, goes up top. We talked about that second receiver. It's Brandon Felder. This ball is threaded, but Felder, great concentration to the 37-yard line. Place going nuts. Penn State, of course, ends up spiking the ball here. Right move to make. Now, one of the true catches for the ages in Penn State history to Allen Robinson. Skies to the half-yard line. Everything's in bounds. Okay? Everything in bounds. Absolutely incredible. Comes down at the half-yard line. They reviewed this one as well, but I think just to make sure, just got to be smart about it. And then the quarterback sneak over the right side. He actually crawled over a body to get in. The one thing that they reviewed that too was to see if his elbow came down. Yeah. Didn't. The ball crossed. That was the one that put it into overtime. Bill O'Brien considered 2 points, but then went for 1.
Lightning quick. I mean, it was amazing.
Yeah.
So fast that Michigan actually had a chance to come back down the field. So it was an amazing drive.
Yeah, 23 seconds, by the way, 80 yards. And again, they work on this all the time. Donovan Smith, very impressed by the poise his quarterback showed.
Very poised out there. You know, credit to him and, you know, the line as well, protecting, allowing him to throw the ball. And, you know, he's taking it all in. And
no question. Now, at the end of regulation, here's Penn State on the doorstep. Bill O'Brien initially thought about going for 2.
Yeah, I wanted to win the game there, and then I made a decision to go for 1 there. I felt an urge to just go and win the game right there. I really feel good about our 2-point plays, but at the same time I said, you know what, let's go for 1. Let's tie it and see how it goes in overtime.
Yeah, let's see how it goes.
He was holding them up. Yeah, he was holding them up as soon as they scored.
Yep,
he was holding them up.
He thought about it first. Allen Robinson. I've said that there's only one other receiver I put him in the same category with at Penn State, and that would be Bobby Ingram.
Yeah, 5 catches, 84 yards. But that catch that he made at the half-yard line, Steve, you see the defensive back, and this is the kind of skill level he's at. The defensive back goes up for it, mistimes it, and doesn't jump quite high enough. Allen Robinson waited for the perfect timing as he turned his body, went up at its highest point, and brought that ball down. He does something amazing every week.
After Zach Zwinnock fumbled to start the third quarter, it was all Bill Belton the rest of the way, including the game winner at the end, Andrew Callista, on a 27-carry day by Bill Belton.
Bill O'Brien's era at Penn State started with Bill Belton as his #1 tailback. A few injuries and 1,000 yards later, Zach Zwinnock was his go-to man, and that would continue against the Wolverines. But it was this fumble to start the second half that thrust Bill Belton back into the #1 spot, and he was ready for his moment.
I was raised to know that I'm able to do everything, so that's where I went into it with confidence, and I was able to get it done.
4 straight carries to start the 4th OT. Power up the middle for 5. Frustration after a slip would not deny him. Tough run breaking tackles for 3 more. 4th and game.
When the line washed everything down, like I had to have patience with it, and the line did a good job of opening up holes in that.
Did it sink into you that if you didn't get that yard, the game was over?
Yeah, I knew that. I knew I was going to get the yard. I went into it, I'm like, all right, like if I don't get the yard, I'm going to hear this for the rest of the time I'm here, so I'm going to get the yard.
Oh, he got the yard, and 3 carries later, it was his time to put the Wolverines on ice. I formation, Belton bounces it to the outside and into Penn State history.
Like I said, the line did a good job, and they washed everybody down. The middle was crowded, and Pat Zerbe did a good job on his man, and I was able to get to the corner, and that was game.
The whiteout explodes here at Beaver Stadium. Wow!
And what a game it was for #1. 9 carries, 29 yards in the extra session. We relish that workload.
Being in there the majority of the time allows you to get in the rhythm, and I enjoy playing the game today, and we just got to get back to work on Monday.
Whatever the future holds for Belton and the Penn State backs, you could count on Belton being ready to deal with anything thrown his way.
When I was younger, everything didn't go my way. As of last year, everything didn't go my way. But they continue to tell me that I can do everything and have confidence in myself.
The confidence that started right here in the north end zone will carry the Lions into the bye week, and they hope it'll make the trek out to Columbus, where Penn State hopes to beat Michigan and Ohio State in the same season for only the third time. For the Blue White Tailgate Show, I'm Andrew Callista.
30 touches in this game, 27 carries and 3 receptions. He was called upon, and you get into certain moments, Todd. One of the key words any coach will tell you is trust. And at this particular moment, Bill O'Brien looked at Belton and said trust, and it came through.
If anybody needs a bye week, it's Bill Belton. His previous high was 16 carries in a game. He went for 27 against the Wolverines.
And Bill O'Brien knew in overtime the running game had to be pivotal.
They're a really good red area defense, and we threw it on second down. We took a sack. I think what we tried to do at the end there was run it on first and second down, and then have our best third down calls. Sometimes it worked out, sometimes it didn't. Then we had the 4th and 1 call, and so we went for it there, but with the run. But I tried to go a little bit more to the run in overtime because I felt confident in the runs that we were calling.
And that's interesting because you're talking about a Michigan defense that had been giving up on the average just 90 yards rushing per game. The Christian Hackenberg sneak was the first rushing touchdown they'd given up since last season. And then, of course, Bill Belton took it home from 2 yards out. 2 rushing touchdowns, 1 to tie, 1 to win. We'll come back, take a look at the defense right after this. Welcome back to Blue White Tailgate presented by Rich Coast Coffee. Odd to say in a 43-40 game, and I know it's 4 overtimes, but the defense really stepped up.
I'm chuckling because I know where you're going with it. I couldn't agree more. All I think about is all the good things that they did defensively, and they gave up 40 points. Now, of course, a little bit of that was in overtime, but especially when you talk about stout, that run defense was unbelievable. Devin Gardner, of course, over 100 yards, but most of that was getting away from pressure, and just the run defense in itself to shut them down. 30 carries, 28 yards for Michigan's straight-ahead run attack. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Fitz Toussaint, 27 carries, 27 yards. Bill O'Brien feels his defense a big reason why they won this thing.
Yeah, I don't think you can say enough about our defense. They just kept coming up big, and they gave up a couple plays, but overall I thought they played a whale of a football game, and CJ, all those guys. I mean, I was watching them close there at the end. They were rushing hard. They were making it difficult to run the football. I thought all those guys really contributed to the win, and can't say enough about our defense.
They also gave them different looks. A 5-man front several times in the game, and then a page out of the old Joe Paterno book where they took Malcolm Willis up, gave him a 4-4 look, and that was Joe's old defense.
Yeah, and Coach Butler was talking about afterwards, they blitzed a lot more, and it was effective when they did choose to blitz. And we mentioned Gardner. He was really the one that avoided a lot of that, but they rushed him into a couple of mistakes, a couple of turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers and then actually cashed in. They scored their first touchdowns off of turnovers this year.
They actually, the 15 possessions in regulation, they also forced 6 3-and-outs. A lot of people don't realize that either. Devin Gardner was able to get yards, as Todd referenced, on some of those X plays. That's what we call X plays, where you just invent and create. Deion Barnes said for the most part they did a pretty good job.
But he broke out for a couple of them that, a couple of it was my fault, a couple of it was other people's fault. But, he was a good runner. When he seen the hole, he was going. But as you said, our game plan was contained. Don't let him run. Don't let him beat us with his feet, let him beat us strong.
Daquan Jones makes a big tackle in overtime that keeps Toussaint a half yard away from a first down, and the missed field goal happens right after that. The interception by Zettel early in the game set up 7 points as well.
Yeah, some really athletic plays. Both linebackers had 10 tackles in this game. They were all over the defensive line, the line of scrimmage, the point of attack. And Steve, it was right away. You could see the energy that they came out with and the intensity. There was a lot of fuel in the tank. Daquan Jones told me they were just flat out mad and motivated before that game.
The Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week is also our Defensive Player of the Week. Really helped make the decision. C.J. Olaniyan, another week where he played really well. And not only that, I mean, look at him right there, right in on the sack. But they float him around the line of scrimmage now. Gardner, feeling the heat, gets away from Carson, but he's going to be tracked down by, and there's Olaniyan dropping into coverage and knocking that away. Athletic for a defensive end. Remember, Olaniyan, like Allen Robinson and Zettel, what do all three of those guys have in common? They're all from Michigan. They're all from Michigan.
Had a little extra motivation. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting the way they played. All right, so that's what they did. You mentioned the linebackers. Carson and Hull end up with 20 tackles between the two of them. Your thoughts on how they played?
Well, to have that compliment, Mike Hull has been dealing with an injury, but to have him healthy and healthy enough to get out there and give it his best just compliments Glenn Carson. I mean, Carson grew so much in the non-conference schedule without the support of Hull. Now that he's there, I think those two are just feeding off each other, and Wortman made some nice plays as well out there in run defense. So the linebackers are finally a little bit more stable. The one play you saw Carson chasing Funchess in coverage. So I don't know if that's the best idea to have Carson chasing a guy, but he created a lot of mismatch problems. But it's really nice to see those linebackers really holding up well.
And by the way, that second bye week, the one they're in right now, is going to even benefit Hull even more so with that knee. He's getting better and better each game. He also knows the defense. They were put in some sticky situations along the way, and they survived.
At that point, we're just saying we're going to go downhill. We're going to take away the run game, and we're going to play smash mouth football and give our offense and team the best chance we have of winning.
You also have to create your own luck in games like these. When you get into big games, Jordan Lucas early, I think, established they're going to create their own luck.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the secondary, Gardner's one of those guys that runs hot and cold. He can throw some plays or some passes that are going to be some mistake. You saw Anthony Zettel at the interception. Olaniyan stepped up and knocked one down. And Lucas in that secondary, I think they knew if they just stay in their positions, get him to give him a look, he's going to make a mistake or two, and they can pounce on it. Did a good job of run support as well. And the secondary, you know, we talk about how did they give up 40 points? Yeah. Because each phase of the defense really did a nice job all night.
Yeah. So then you look at, you know, how he played. That interception was early, set up the first touchdown. The pass to Felder was the first touchdown off a takeaway this year. Hit of the week, by the way, is also involving C.J. Olaniyan. And that hit of the week is the one that ended up creating the fumble. Here it is. This is the third Gardner. Look at it right there, and Daquan Jones pounces on it. Olaniyan, look at it, just comes in, just strips it from behind, and that is our hit of the week. One more look, I predict he fumbles.
I predict Jones is on it.
You are so clairvoyant. It really, it's amazing. Malcolm Willis stepped up, played a good game. They put him in some spots a little closer to the line of scrimmage at times. Blitzed him. I thought he was effective.
What a versatile defense we got going on. Obiang Ajapong early in the year stepped up as a linebacker, moved up from the secondary. I think they're finding out that these guys have some characteristics and some athletic ability, some skills that they can maneuver and really give these guys some different looks. And you know, when you do those things, it energizes practice as well for them, and it gets them thinking, because they're coming off a very, very poor outing against Indiana, and they want to do something different. They want something else that they can think is effective out there, and that Coach Butler gave them the tools to really create some success against Michigan.
And by the way, something that's never talked about, by the way, is that when we talk about 2-minute offense, in Penn State, of course, we saw it go 23 seconds, 80 yards, tie the game up. That also means you're practicing 2-minute defense as well. Michigan had a shot at the end of the first half, got nothing out of it, had a shot at the end in the final few seconds, didn't score there either. So, you know, you forget about the 2-minute defense sometimes too, and that played a pivotal role in this game. Well, coming up, we'll grade out how things have gone in the opening half of the season. Oh, this will be a great segment as we continue right after this. Segment that involves dart throwing, where we're just going to throw a dart and go, oh, there's a grade. But overall, you look at the first 6 games of the season. Now, and I think you have to put it into a little bit of context. I mean, you don't want to make excuses, but again, when you're talking about 61 scholarship players, 53 of which are in the eligibility category, because there are 8 that are redshirting right now. I mean, to be 4-2 at this stage and a win over Michigan, I mean, they've done a lot of good things to this point.
No doubt, and they just played their 11th and 12th true freshman of the season already in half a year. And here's the one thing I wanted to mention earlier in the show, but I have to mention it now because it shows you in 6 games just how much things have changed as offensively. I heard something in the stands I've never, ever heard before, and it happened in the first quarter, 4th and 1, when Coach OBrien went for it. Before he went for it, I actually heard a fan say, "Punt it, Coach, punt it." I've never, ever heard a fan imploring the coach to punt the ball because they just had a sense that he was going to go for it. So that's how much things have changed with the offense. But you're right. I mean, they're doing a lot of really good things, especially with a true freshman at quarterback.
7 run-ons on the kick cover team. All right, Adam Geiger now holding. Zach Ladonis now snapping. I mean, a lot of things have changed over the weeks. All right, so just for the fun, and this is the fun part.
Yeah.
We'll grade how things have gone so far. Okay, please. Don't take this seriously. There's going to be a couple darts here and there, and we'll just give it a shot, see how it goes. Start with, I don't know, quarterback looks good. How about we'll go with you first?
I'm going to give Christian Hackenberg a B+.
Yep.
I mean, I'd love to give him an A, but, he's a true freshman. He's got a lot of growing to do. The guy does lead the Big Ten in passing. He's got 11 touchdown passes already, but obviously you want to get rid of some of the mistakes that you make.
As a freshman quarterback, I give him an A+ as a freshman quarterback. In terms of quarterback play overall, I'm going to go B+ as well because you know what? I see all this area where he's just going to get better and better and better. So I want to give him a little margin to get better with the B+. All right, running backs.
I'm going to go a solid B. It's up and down a little bit. Some guys are an A one game, a C the next game. But I think overall when you have 3 running backs, the way they've performed, I'm going to give them a B.
Yeah, B as well. And the same thing here. I think that when you look at the performances they've had, there have been some good performances along the way. The fumble obviously was, then Belton stepped in, but I think B overall for the running backs.
Okay.
Same thing as you. Okay, next up, wide receivers and tight ends.
All right, well, I'm going to cheat a little bit. Allen Robinson gets an A+. So he gets his own grade, A+. The rest I'm going to give a B-. Felder was hurt a little bit, and there hasn't been a lot of contributions until this last game. The tight ends, they've disappeared a little bit, some injury issues. We haven't seen Adam Brenneman contributing in the last couple of games. Kyle Carter could catch a little bit more. Nice to see Jesse James get involved. So I'll go A+, Allen Robinson, B- for the rest of the unit, and I think they're going to improve in that second half.
I'll just do an overall grade of A- on this group. Allen Robinson's been outstanding. When Felder gets back in the lineup healthy, you notice what he was able to do. They needed a couple big plays early from Geno Lewis. He gave it to them. Carter had 6 catches, Indiana, 6 catches for Jesse James. So I'm going to go A- in that group. Offensive line.
Well, I'm a little tougher on these guys. We expected a lot at the beginning of the year. I'm going to go C+ with them. There's been some really, really uneven performances. They're getting into the back end of the schedule the rest of the way in the Big Ten, so we'll see what they can do, but they've got to be a little bit more consistent.
I'm going to go B with this group. I think there's room to even get better down the stretch, but I've seen some things in the running game, pass protection. I give them a solid B. Okay, overall report card, on the offense. So
we went B+ each of us for quarterback.
Yeah. So the overall offense, you give the overall offense a what?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a good solid B. Okay. I'm going to go good solid B with that.
I'm going to go B+. I think in the second half they have room to grow, and I think they're going to get there. Defense now. Let's go defensive front.
The defensive front, I'm going to go B+. I really like what they did against Michigan. That raised the grade for me, from the last one. I mean, that was just an outstanding performance.
Right. I'm going to go for the defensive line A-. Like the way they've been playing, especially Daquan Jones. Olanigan's really coming on.
Linebackers B and rising quickly with Mike Hall coming back.
Mike Hall being there gives me a B+ when I look at the linebackers.
I'm going to take your classes. You're a little bit easier on
okay. Secondary.
Secondary, I got a C+. This is a group that's really, really young. They did a nice job against Syracuse, and then also they've had some issues against Central Florida. I mean, when you see passing teams, Indiana, they gave up some touchdowns against Indiana instead of just field goals. So I'm going to go C+ for them, B+, B, and C+.
Okay, and I'm going to go secondary. I'm going to go with a B for them. I think I've seen some improvement there along the way. A couple tough moments as well, but I'll go B on secondary. So I go A-, B+, B in terms of my grades all the way through. Okay, kicking part of it.
Kicking part of it, I'd really like what Sam Ficken has done. I mean, all the consecutive field goals, and he's become a weapon now that Coach OBrien will go to. 45-yard field goal, he rolls them right out there, no problem. I'm going A- with them.
I'll go A-, and what keeps it from being an A is Alex Butterworth needs to be more consistent. But I think where Ficken kicks the ball on kickoffs as well as what he does on field goals, that gives it an A-. Coverage now. Coverage teams are very important in all this.
Coverage, I'm going to go with a B. I think, you know, I would say the return games probably needs a little bit more improvement, but kick coverage has been pretty decent. It hasn't cost them too much field position.
Yeah, and you look at the return game with what they've done. Della Valle has good judgment. Von Walker's been good. Gino can give them some pop. Gino Lewis in the kickoff return game. Coverage has been good. I'm going to give them a B to this point.
Okay, and return game, I'm just going a solid C right now because I think it's very average, and I think they have potential but haven't really shown it quite yet.
Okay, and overall special teams grade?
I'm going to go with just a B. You know, with B+, C, and B, good solid B, which is good. I mean, that's good in my book, and room for improvement. But
B+ for me overall. So again, so you look at the two categories. You go B+, B+, B. I'm B+ all the way through. Okay. So
there you go.
In the end, well, I think it's going to be a fun second half of the season.
Absolutely.
They got 6 consecutive games starting at Ohio State. Once they get through that cream puff, then we'll see how it goes. Coming up, over 100 recruits were at the game. Andrew Callista and Todd will come back, talk about the recruiting part of this, and Luke Prado waiver as we continue. Tailgate presented by Those Cars.
Welcome back to the Blue-White Tailgate. It's time for our recruiting segment brought to you by Central Pennsylvania Dock and Door. Joining me now is Andrew Callista here on the set. And Andrew, we talk about the impact of the win on recruiting, but how about just the impact of the overall atmosphere in general, win or lose? That was pretty impressive for the recruits to see.
The atmosphere was crazy. I mean, the sidelines were packed before the game with the parents. The parents were loving it, I think, more than the kids. But, I mean, you're talking about 16, 17, 18-year-old kids standing on the sidelines. You have an entire student section chanting their names. And even 2 Penn State commits, DeAndre Tompkins and Antoine White, made their way up to the student section. You see the video on Yahoo. They're getting tossed up in the air. You know, how could you not love that environment?
Well, it's just one of those things. Over 100 recruits were there, and this is going to have an impact for years to come because the recruits were from several different years. Now, Coach OBrien was asked specifically about all the recruits that were there. He can't talk specifically, but he did talk in general about the atmosphere.
Yeah, you know, I'm not really allowed to talk too much specifically about recruiting, but I do think that, you know, I'll tell you, you know, what I say. You know, this is what you see is what you get with this staff. We're a bunch of, you know, hard-nosed coaches that believe in a philosophy of football, of tough, smart football. You know, you come to Penn State, you got a chance of playing in front of 108,000 fans. You're going to be on TV every week, and you're going to get a fantastic education. There's over 150 different majors to choose from here. You graduate here playing football with a degree from Penn State. It's really an unbeatable combination. So hopefully things worked out tonight in that realm too.
And when he said those words in the post-game press conference, there was everybody hanging on his words up in the rafters, all the recruits, their parents. They heard everything that he said. So position-wise, how do you think this is going to help them out? What are they targeting?
Well, I think it's going to help them out tremendously. I mean, you have the nation's top tight end, Mike Gesicki, out of New Jersey. It's a Penn State-Ohio State battle going into this week. I think by the end of the week, you're going to see him commit to the Lions. He loved his visit. He had Christian Hackenberg as his host and Adam Bredeman. I mean, those are 2 guys that you want to hang out with when you come to Happy Valley for the weekend. I mean, and then you got the offensive line because without those guys up front, you really can't do much on offense. You have Austin Clark out of Virginia, Sterling Jenkins from Pittsburgh. Jenkins is the one that you really want to get. I mean, he's a homegrown kid. You don't want him going out west, either Ohio State or Notre Dame. So he's a big target for the 2015 class. So is Austin Clark, as I mentioned. And maybe someone down there, Anthony Palazzolo from Connecticut. Right now he has offers from Connecticut and Boston College. He camped at Penn State. He loves it, loves Coach Mack, met with Coach OBrien. Coach Cholo's recruiting him. So I think that would work out from Penn State as we go forward.
Certainly a position they could use some depth at offensive line. Let's take a quick look at our injury update, the Health South injury update. Pretty clean sheet. Ryan Kaiser back and starting. Mike Hall's playing. And Brent Wilkerson, Brad Bars, Matt Lehman, of course, we knew about all of those guys, so it's nice to see these guys healthy and pretty much ready to go.
Oh yeah, and another well-timed bye week. Hopefully this one goes a little bit better than the last one, but the important thing is to get out of this bye week healthy, going to Columbus 100% healthy too.
Yeah, that would be nice to go into Ohio State and Columbus to see if they can knock off the Buckeyes after taking care of the Wolverines. That is our recruiting segment. We talked about it. Over 100 kids were there. It's going to have a positive impact through the next 3 years, and they got a lot of openings right now. Only 61 scholarship players that can go up to 75 next year. We'll be right back on the Blue-White Tailgate. We'll hear an interview, and then we'll wrap it up with the top 25 games later in the show.
For me, it's always a lot of fun to have good friends on the show, and regardless of whether there's a book involved or not. And my good friend Lou Prado's here. Lou, great to have you with us.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Thanks for the station and you to have me on. I always enjoyed sitting here talking to you, and we could go on for hours and get Fran here, and we'd have a real BS session.
You darn right we would.
Jack Ham, and we'd go for 3 or 4 hours.
On and on. The book is entitled "We Are Penn State: The Remarkable Journey of the 2012 Nittany Lion Football Team." You know, they come to you with ideas for books, and this ends up being a diary of the season. But you have to do this in such a way, Lou, where it really was not where you took notes during the course of the season. You had to go back to do this.
Yeah, as you and I have discussed on your radio show, but give a plug in for that great radio show, one to infinity, I think it's on all over. But I wanted to do a book about Bill O'Brien's first year. I proposed this to Triumph back in May of last year, and they said, well, if you get him to write it, we would. But I talked to Bill. I'd help ghost him. He said, only if we win a national championship, maybe a Big Ten championship. But that was before the sanction. When the sanctions came down, that was off. So I forgot about it. I remember telling him at the quarterback club meeting to keep a diary. I never thinking that I'd keep a diary.
Right.
So shortly after the season ended, about 3 to 4 days after the Wisconsin game, I get a call from the publisher, Triumph of Chicago. I've done books before. And they said, how would you like to, my contact, Tom Bass, said, how would you like to write a book about the season? I said, yeah, I'd love to. He said, well, we have a special format. I'll send you a book. I didn't think anything about a diary, and I received a book just before Christmas, and I looked at it, and I said, it was a book of 205 season of Ohio State.
Right.
And I looked at it, and I said, can I do a diary? And I didn't think too quickly. I said, yeah, I can do this. One of the reasons I could do it is because I keep a good file going through this season. Even this year, I'm busy. I spend 2 or 3 hours on a Monday, sometimes Sunday and Monday, just downloading stories from the internet, transcripts, all the stuff. And I've been to the, I go like you. I go to the quarterback club, and I go to the news conference. I don't attend everything that the reporters, because I'm not really a beat reporter. But because of that, I started digging into it. I had to put it together in 3 months. I had to write the first, the manuscript, submit it by March 31st. Once we got through galley proofs, and it was right up to about June 18th, June 19th before they went to the printer.
What was the easiest part of this? And then what was maybe one that ended up being a little thorny for you to write?
Well, the thorniest part, first off, they said they didn't want too much about the games, so I didn't have to, that was sort of easy. Yeah. So I had to just put them in a microcosm, a little summary, so to speak. But writing about, it starts out with they said they didn't want too much about the scandal, but I had to get in the scandal. So I think writing about the scandal without getting too much into the scandal and getting my, I'm a very opinionated person.
Really? Really?
I make a lot of enemies that way, including ex-students, but I make a lot of friends too that way. But I had to, I had to think about that, and and I'm touched by the scandal because I knew Joe, from time 1955 when I came to school, and Tim Curley hired me and gave me a big break, took this old man and then gave him a new career running the sports museum, and then I started writing the books and the articles, and now considered an unofficial sports historian. I had to touch on those things, but I didn't want to get so far, so that was probably the toughest. What was the easiest? I mean, probably the summary of the games. But also, once I got going, I want to say it was easy because writing is difficult, but it was relatively easy because it fell into place. And perhaps, again, going to the difficulty, is all the things I had to cut out. I mean, I overwrite any time. People that know me know.
Sure. But does it end up being, because of the way the season played out, does it end up being because you write it a labor of love.
Yeah, right. It's a labor of love.
Yeah.
It was a labor of love. People that have read it, I mean, you know, it's sort of taking a back seat sometimes.
But it's easy. This is a nice, easy, quick read for me.
Yeah, and people that have read it said it's very emotional.
Yeah.
And I didn't write an emotional book. I wasn't having an emotion when I was you know, sitting at the computer putting this down. But I guess when you read it all in one, you know, a lot of people said that they couldn't put it down sometimes.
Well, no, I read it straight through, and you have to remember, you are an emotional guy.
Exactly.
And maybe you may not think you're writing emotionally, but I could read it the way you say it. How about that?
Well, you know me very well, Steve,
Yeah.
and I guess, you know, that's a good way of doing it. I mean, it is true. I wrote it the way I say it, and you know, and I was writing along. I was, you know, putting my emotion on the page, but I didn't realize that the reader would get emotional, even have tears in their eyes. Some of them.
I mean, it's a remarkable book. Thanks, and I enjoyed it. I mean, literally, one sitting I could do this. Lou, always a pleasure. It's called We Are Penn State, The Remarkable Journey of the 2012 Nittany Lions, available at bookstores. And, of course, you run into Lou, I'll bet he'll sign it for you. Lou, thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks to the station for having me on.
My good friend Lou Prado will wrap it up in a moment on Blue White Tailgate. Welcome back after the 4 overtime epic. Todd, what do you think of the college football overtime rule? I mean, it's been there for a long time. What do you think of it?
I like it better than sudden death. I wish they would move the ball back just a little bit, starting at the 25, maybe the 30 or the 35, to eliminate what I call the Brady Hoke factor, that first overtime session where he ended up on third down just taking a knee and trying to place it for the field goal kicker. I don't think that involves a lot of strategy right there. If you start at the 35, you're thinking about, I got to get a first down at least to get myself into quality field goal position, and then you can go from there. So I like it. I like that they go back and forth. But I would like to move the ball back just a little bit.
I realize time enters into this because you've already played 3 hours plus, but you take special teams out of it. You take an element out of the game, except for obviously place kicking. So I've never been crazy about how they do college overtime because it's a different football game at that point. All right, top 25 games this week. All right, let's take a look at the top 25 games this week. Florida, Missouri. Missouri, Texas A&M could still play, by the way, for the SEC championship. Wouldn't that be incredible?
Well, I would think most of these schools are just going to be SEC schools anyway. A record 8 schools in the top 25 from the SEC. But yeah, another couple of good matchups there for Florida, Missouri.
But Clemson, Florida State's the game, and this is Clemson's opportunity, Todd. I think Clemson with Taj Boyd is going to win at home.
Well, and I think that Hackenberg would have a lot more pub nationally if it wasn't for Jameis Winston, who just taken all his publicity. So that is going to be a good matchup between the Seminoles and the Tigers.
They're referring to Winston now as the natural. What about the Big Ten games? Of course, the one that we'll be keeping an eye on will be the Iowa-Ohio State game. Minnesota Northwestern, Purdue, Michigan State, Indiana, and Michigan. Bill has 2 Penn State opponents, but the Ohio State big game is the one that we'll watch. Homecoming, by the way, in Columbus.
Yeah, we'll see how the Buckeyes respond. And of course, we're going to be at home dissecting that game, so we have all kinds of awesome knowledge for next week's show, right?
Yeah, I'll dissect it for a quarter and a half. All right, so now let's get to the second half of this season. You look at this, 6 down, 6 to go, but it's 6 straight weeks, no break. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the offensive line really holds the key, and really the line of scrimmage. The defensive line has shown they're going to get their motor going. They're going to show up and play fast right from the beginning. I think it really comes down to the offensive line because you want to establish the run to keep people from blitzing Hackenberg and keep them off the Big Ten's leading passer. So if they can get some more consistent performances out of the offensive line, I think they can do well in the second half.
Obviously, a great schedule that starts with Ohio State. Then after that, I mean, Illinois certainly is much improved. We know Purdue has struggled. Minnesota, of course, on the road. Nebraska here, and then at Wisconsin. So they've got some big ones coming down the stretch, and we'll break down each one as each week goes along. Phil, missed you.
Yep.
For Todd, I'm Steve. Great to have you with us. Aarons, thanks so much. We're taking these home for the bye week.